Welcome to Dead Man Talking. Tonight's story is the next installment in the incredible series by Jgrupe over on Reddit No Sleep. As ever, please do let us know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. It really does help with the channel and our community further. And why not hashtag TeamFEAR and DMT's Cryptid crew. And so, with that aside, let's get into tonight's story, entitled This is not a healing pool, and that is not a holy man. Let's get straight into that. I never expected the response I received to my first post about the healing spring. A lot of people commented with ideas on how to destroy the horrible place, and with its giant carnivorous purple fig plants, the ones living in secret on the floor of the lake. They had stolen the lives of innocent people who had come to be healed, replacing them with doppelgangers. These imposters now roamed the earth, angry and thirsty, and full of rage, and looking to spread their vines and infect as many others as they could. I had run into two of these replacement plant people during my outpatient appointment at the prosthesis clinic. The purple fig monsters had stolen my leg, but weren't satisfied with that, it seemed. Now they wanted the rest of my body as well. "What are you doing here?" the occupational therapist had asked. "And didn't you hear about the healing spring? Oh, it's very close. We can show you." Her long, purple and gold vine tongue had popped briskly out of her mouth, and after that she had poked it back in with a dainty finger, the nail freshly painted in a glossy, bright pink shade. The occupational therapist and her assistant had the same telltale eyes that my uncle had possessed after being healed by the spring. There was a second pair of pale blue eyes beneath the superficial ones, and they blinked perpendicular to the first, staying closed almost all of the time, only showing themselves occasionally to a select few, myself included. It was like they wanted me to know. I had slid right over the paper-covered stainless steel examination table, my mouth agape. I jumped up, terrified, and ran out of there on my good leg and prosthesis as quickly as I could, screaming. They didn't try to stop me, they just watched, smiling. They held their clipboard and stood still as a pair of statues, only their eyes turning to watch me go. I was more frightened than I had ever been in my life, my heart beating fast and hard as I backed away and hurried out of the office. "Let us know if you change your mind," their voices rang out cheerily from behind me as I ran away. When I got home, I didn't know what to do. I typed out what had happened to me on the computer so I wouldn't forget a single detail, and as a bit of proof in case something should happen to me. By the time that I was finished, I realized it read like a horror story. And what better place to share something like that, I thought. You can all decide for yourselves if it's true, I said to myself as I hit the post button. A small part of me wondered if anyone else who had witnessed the healing pool's curse on a loved one would read it. And surprisingly, someone did contact me, asking where the pool was located. They said they had a similar experience with one of their loved ones and wanted to know if it was the same place. I was a little scared of giving out my location. Who knew exactly what kind of person I was dealing with? They could be a spy for the church, a plant, I thought to myself, and then laughed out loud. Fuck it. Well, how about this? Where's the place that you were talking about? And I'll confirm if it's the same one. Redacted, the healing spring I visited with my cousin was in redacted. Holy shit. Are you fucking kidding me? Redacted? No, for real. I take it they're the same. Well, yeah. WTF. Alright. I'm taking a chance here. Call me, and here's my number. We ended up speaking on the phone for a while, and it turned out the guy lived in a neighbouring town. I know they say never to meet up with people online, but this seemed different. I got the distinct impression that he was genuine. And not only that, but he had a plan. He said he would tell me more in person, and I decided to trust him, although I still arranged for it to be in a public place. We met at a coffee shop and he waved me over from his table. So, guess you're Jgrupe? He asked. And you must be redacted. I said. Very original, by the way. Thanks. I wish I could say the same. He half joked, sipping his black coffee. Listen, I don't know if your story was true or not, but I tend to believe it. There's too many details that match up what happened to me when I was a kid. And the guy looked deeply troubled. He had dark circles beneath his eyes, and his hair was long and greasy. The lines on his face told me he had been through hell and barely come out alive. What happened, anyways? I asked. He stared at his coffee for a few moments longer, deep in thought, before speaking. I was just a kid. My cousin wasn't that much older than me, but he had a bum leg. It had been like that since he was born. He couldn't play sports, couldn't run around with the rest of us kids. And my mom, well, she was a believer. She heard about the healing spring. Said we should go up there one Saturday and bring Billy and his mom, my Aunt Kathy. Sounds familiar, I said. Yeah, right. So anyways, we get there and Billy goes out into the water. I was going to go in with him, but my mom told me I had to put on sunscreen first. And so there I am putting on the suntan lotion, and my mom is getting my back for me, and I'm watching Billy out there in the water. Well, he's swimming around and splashing, and I'm thinking, hurry up, Mom. I want to get out there too, you know? Well, I'm getting impatient. Well, that's when I see him go under. His head goes straight under like a loon going fishing. Or like something yanks his leg and pawed him down, quick like. Something real strong. Well, the guy took a sip of his coffee and set it back down. He sat there for a while and looked into the pitch blackness of his drink. He took a deep breath and then continued. So I tell my mum I'm going in there. To hell with the sunscreen, you know. So I run over to the edge of the water and she's yelling at me, but I don't care. And then I see Billy pop his head out of the water, and I'm relieved at first. And that's until I get closer and look at him. I think to myself, that ain't Billy. That's somebody else wearing a Billy suit. Well, the man looked up at me, gave me a look as if he was waiting for me to call him a liar. What happened next? I thought my uncle was an imposter right away too. I gave him what I hoped was a solemn look. I had been through something similar and remembered how no one had believed me, not even my own mother. So I jumped in the water and started swimming out there, right past the kid. I had my goggles on and I looked underneath, but I couldn't see nothing. It was so murky under there. I tried to swim down, but I couldn't find him. My mom nearly had a fit, yelling and screaming at me. She kept telling me my cousin was right there. He was healed, and what was I doing out swimming in the water when a miracle just happened? Well, eventually I had to give up and come out of there. I almost believed it myself for a little while. Tried to convince myself that it was true, but I always knew, deep down. Well, he had forgotten his coffee for the time being and just looked at me, waiting to see what I would say. I believe you, first of all, I told him. I know that's not what you're used to hearing when you tell that story. At least that's not what people said when I told them what happened to me. They called me a fucking liar, and every other terrible name that you can call someone. Well, he nodded and looked down at his coffee again. We sat there in silence for a minute, and I wasn't sure what to say next. But then he very hesitantly told me the main reason why he had contacted me. It took a while for him to get around to it. A lot of beating around the bush, but eventually I got it out of him. It turned out that he had a plan. I listened intently for over an hour as he went through the details. He said I didn't need to decide right there and then, but that I should think about it. After all, this was a big decision. It could mean jail time for the both of us if we were caught. I went home and had trouble sleeping that night. I tossed and turned, trying in vain to get comfortable as my non-existent limbs screamed in impossible pain. When I finally dozed off, my dreams were vivid, the tension crackling in the air like static before a thunderstorm. This dark energy transformed itself into nightmares that felt indistinguishable from reality. I always had nightmares these days. After the occupational therapist's office, they had gotten 10 times worse. It was like the creatures at the bottom of the lake could see into my mind now. They had planted a seed of something evil in my head, from which terrible, horrible visions grew while I slept. While I was exposed. It sounds crazy, I know, but it probably is crazy. In my dream, I was at the bottom of the lake again. The plants were all around me, towering high above me. The vines slithered like a pit of vipers all around me, and I saw I was up to my neck in them, looking out and helpless. I was being consumed by them like quicksand. I gasped for air and felt their weight on my chest and pushing my breath from my lungs as I struggled and sank deeper into the writhing, tangled mass of leathery vines. One of the giant purple fig plants leaned over from its great height and came towards me. I saw the face inside belonged to my Uncle Dan. It was pale, bloated, rotten, decayed. His eyes were gone now, and small fish swam in and out of the dark hollows where they had once been. His mouth opened, and inside it looked just like the inside of a fig. As he spoke, the little finger hair cilia vibrated and swayed. "You belong here with me. Come back to the healing pool. There's a spot right here next to me, Jason. It's been reserved for you. I will take you in and make you one with it. You will not be missed up above. Join me." I saw an eel poking its head from his eye socket. It went back inside to hide in his skull, shy. The darkness from where his eyes once were stared back at me. He continued to speak in my Uncle Dan's voice, but I could no longer comprehend the words. They were in an alien language that I had never heard before. I felt the vines crawling up to my neck, then my chin, over my lips and past the gums. Strangled breathing, here we come. Then down my throat, reaching inside of me as I retched and gagged. The vines reached down my esophagus, and I felt them moving around and settling in my stomach, planting roots there. My uncle saw this and smiled at me, his mouth made of cilia that jiggled in delight as he watched my terror grow. I woke up panting, covered in a cold sweat. My heart was beating heavily in my chest. The dark room around me was full of malicious-looking shadows. One of these shadows looked like a person standing over me. And I turned on the bedside lamp, terrified. A priest in long purple robe stood over my bed. He had been waiting there in the darkness, watching me sleep. His eyes were a pale blue, and he had a small, humorless grin on his face. He gripped a long staff in his left hand, and he lifted it up and then brought it back down to the floor with a loud bang. A vine then crept out of his mouth and inched towards me, and I found that I couldn't move. His pale blue eyes watched me as they blinked irregularly from side to side. I looked and saw my hands and feet were bound tightly with purple and gold vines. They dug into my skin painfully, crushing my bones. The vine from the priest's mouth came towards me more and more quickly, its face now that of a king cobra. It came at me suddenly, bolting straight to my face and my open mouth as I screamed. I opened my eyes and realized, as I did that, it had been a false awakening. The second dream had been even more terrifying than the first. They had both felt entirely too real. I made up my mind then. We would go through with this crazy son of a bitch's plan. I only hoped he knew what he was doing. This is not a healing pool, dashing hopes and dreams in a single engine Cessna. Let's get straight into that. After my most recent pair of horrifying nightmares, I resolved to call Bill, the guy that I'd met on Reddit. He told me his plan, a way to kill the monsters at the bottom of the lake, and I believed that it could work. The giant purple fig plants had ruined too many lives, had stolen too many souls, and we were going to try and set things right. After a brief talk on the phone, he told me the location of where we would meet. A small airfield north of town. He would be waiting for me at the gates and would take me inside, using his ID badge to get past security. His plane was kept there. A small, single-engine Cessna. I had only been in a plane a few times before and I was afraid of heights, and so I was more than a little scared, but I tried to ignore my fears as I pulled up behind his car outside the airfield. He brought us in and took us to his plane. It was already late in the evening, but for what we had planned, we wanted the cover of darkness, and so we took our time getting set up. The plane was already rigged with what he described as hell in a barrel. A concoction, he said, would kill any living thing. It was like dropping a neutron bomb in the water. Any biological life would cease to exist. I wondered if my doppelganger uncle and the real version of him at the bottom of the lake would die as well. I guess they would. For the former, I was gleeful at the idea. The latter, not so much. But at least Uncle Dan would finally have peace. He would be free of his purgatory of pain at the bottom of the lake. And for that I was thankful. Once we were up in the air, it didn't take long to reach the airspace above the healing pool. Bill told me he worked as a crop duster, and as such, he knew his chemicals. This stuff would do the trick, he told me, as he pushed the button to release the toxic cocktail into the black water below us. A trail of yellow-green dust and smoke hung in the air behind the plane as we passed over the starlit surface of the healing pool. And with the deed done, he banked the plane around and began heading back towards the airfield, careful to leave a wide berth around the chemical cloud still hanging in the air. "Yeah, boy, we did it," he yelled at the top of his lungs. I tried to match his enthusiasm, but failed miserably. The interior of the plane was quiet again. Why did he even want me to come along? I couldn't help but ask myself. Couldn't he have done this on his own? "I don't feel like I did a whole lot," I said to him. "Well, you're the one who made me realize for sure what happened to my cousin, so I'm glad you were here. I might have done this in a day or two anyways, if I got the courage up, but that's not a sure thing. I can't tell you why, but it helped having you along for the ride, so thanks. And Billy and your Uncle Dan are free now, man. At least they will be in an hour or two." I paused and thought about that for a second. What do you mean? I asked. Well, I mean it's not instantaneous, I guess. He gulped. I didn't think that much about it before. He seemed a bit nervous suddenly. So, if it's not immediate, how much pain are they going to be experiencing? Are they going to suffer? I asked him, and he was starting to look a bit red in the face. From what I've read, it's not pretty. I mean, who knows? They'll be affected with the weird plant biology going on down there, but yeah, it could get kind of ugly. What's kind of ugly? I asked. He's been through a lot already and he still feels pain. I'm pretty damn sure of that. Well, I'm not no scientist or anything, but I guess the best way to describe it would be that their insides will become their outsides. He spoke slowly and haltingly. I pictured my uncle's flesh being sucked inward and replaced by the dark sanguineous tissue and blood vessels from within. So, we just made my Uncle Dan turn inside out? Ah, perfect. Just fucking perfect. Suddenly, there was a deafening explosion. I felt a sudden heat on the back of my head and then a cool night air rushed in and I saw the stars above us through the jagged, growing gap in the fiberglass ceiling of the plane. I looked back and saw the entire tail of the Cessna. It was now gone, torn free and flying through the air behind us, disappearing into the darkness of the night sky. We were spiraling downwards from our low altitude. I screamed and swore as my stomach lurched, and the ground came up at us through the windshield. The plane careened off the side of a large evergreen tree and crashed, spinning sickeningly towards the pine needle-strewn floor of the forest. My heart was beating wildly in my chest as I unbuckled my seatbelt. I couldn't believe I was alive. Bill was breathing rapid, shallow breaths beside me. And somehow we had both survived the crash. The low altitude of the plane and the tree branches we had crashed through had been our saving grace. And then I saw the side of Bill's face. He had a long gash down the side of his cheek and his eye was a pinkish purple and closed shut. His leg had a piece of shrapnel in it as well, I noticed. He was bleeding heavily from multiple places. I managed to climb out of my seat and help Bill out of the burning plane. He was taking rasping breaths and wincing with pain each step that we took. It didn't look good. It didn't look like we could walk very far. The fire was getting larger, and I pulled him away from the burning wreckage of the plane. The trees above were starting to catch fire as well, I had seen. We stumbled away from the inferno, and I put Bill's arm over my shoulder to help him walk. He bounced on his good leg, and the other one bled and dripped glistening crimson that reflected the firelight eerily when I looked back at it. The forest swallowed us up, and we made our way into the depths. I had been here before. I had seen so many guards everywhere. The last thing I wanted was to run into them again. The last time they had found me was with a decapitated leg and had called an ambulance for me. I got the feeling they wouldn't be so forgiving this time. I saw flashlights in the distance and pulled Bill the other way, deeper into the woods. And hobbling along, we eventually found a place to hide, a small cave that was concealed by some brush. It was almost invincible, and we were in no condition to run any further. Bill, he could barely move. We would just have to hope that they didn't find us, and we would have to wait until morning to make our escape. Inside the cave there was enough space for us to stretch out and lie down. We couldn't really relax, with the guards looking for us outside. But we managed to settle in and rest for a while. My eyes eventually fluttered shut for a moment, and Bill's did the same. I had nightmares once again, horrible visions of death and destruction on the bottom of the lake, where I resided with the plants amid the slithering mass of snake-like vines. I dreamt that the lake had been brought to a boil, and I watched in terror as my skin blanched and peeled, swelled and fell to pieces. My sleep didn't last very long, and I sat bolt upright, trying desperately not to scream. There were 3 priests looming over us, wearing long hooded, vermilion robes. Their faces were enshrouded in darkness. They elbowed Bill, and he sat up and rubbed his eyes, and then recoiled in surprise at the sight of the priests. "You destroyed the healing pool. The 2 of you will pay for what you have done. You fools! You have no idea what suffering you have caused." The hooded figure in the middle was speaking, I realized. "I'm glad we destroyed it," I said. "It took my Uncle Dan, replaced him with an imposter." "How do you know your Uncle Dan wasn't happy where he was down there? We could see inside his mind, you know. We could dig and root around in there to find his deepest, darkest desires. And we fulfilled them. He got to live out his dreams down there at the bottom of the lake. But you killed him. You robbed him of his dreams." And the figure spoke with assurance, but I knew he was wrong. My uncle wouldn't have wanted to live like that. I saw how he was down there. I was probably the only one in the world this line of bullshit wasn't going to work on. Fuck you and your death plants. I'm glad they got a taste of their own medicine. I looked him dead in the eyes as I said this. "Oh, don't worry," the man in the middle said. "There are plenty of other healing pools. We've got franchises set up everywhere." He tittered at this, and the man and the woman standing on either side of him laughed as well. They chuckled and giggled and pointed at us. Their hands were made of vines, I saw. The vines grew and came towards us rapidly. Before we could do anything, they wrapped around us, and I felt them ensnare me, squeezing the air from my lungs. The world slowly turned from red to black as I lost consciousness. I woke up, I don't know how much later. Bill came awake beside me a few moments after. I looked around in wonderment and terror. My phone was still in my pocket and had a signal. I tried to dial 911, but it wouldn't let me call out. None of my apps would work. Nothing except for this. There was a piece of paper folded up on the ground in front of me, and I picked it up. "Greetings," it read. "As you know, the church frowns upon killing people, and so we devised an alternative way of dealing with miscreants such as yourselves. We let you live the rest of your lives in a labyrinth. Feel free to tell your friends online about it. They won't believe you, of course." The letter was signed at the bottom. I tried to take a picture, but my phone wouldn't let me. There was a distinctive letterhead with a religious symbol at the top. "Your friends from the church," it said at the bottom of the page. I looked around and saw the walls were sheer and impossible to climb. Tall hedges over 20 feet tall towered over us. Brightly coloured snakes and spiders could be seen dotting the foliage here and there, and I suspected this place would not be friendly to visitors. Bill, he was looking pale and sick. "Hey man," I said. "Come on, it's not so bad. At least we got our health." He turned his head and I winced when I saw the deep gash there again, now starting to look mildly red and infected. He tried to stand and almost collapsed on his bad leg. "Oh, right, the shrapnel," I thought to myself. "Yeah," he said, rolling his pale blue eyes. "I drink to that, and am I ever thirsty?" Wow, 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 wow. And another one. Wow. One of the hottest stories on Reddit No Sleep at the moment. Big thank you to the author, Jgrupe, for allowing me to narrate this wonderful, wonderful story. Can't wait to see what else comes from this excellent concept and storyline, and much more of your work in the future. Well, guys and girls, you know the drill. As ever, please do let us know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. It really does help build the channel and our community further. And why not hashtag TeamFEAR and DMT's Cryptid crew. Of course, if you're an aspiring writer or just want to have a crack at things like myself, please do get in contact at the usual email address as on screen, which is dmtforestofear@gmail.com. Rapidly kicking things back into gear, guys, and up a notch. Hoping that you're enjoying the latest authors and stories, and more to come from well-known authors and outstanding storylines. As ever, I hope you're all well and happy, fit and focused, and above all, remember, be safe, not sorry.